Why did the entire shooting academy go quiet the moment she touched that rifle? Why did the crowd of 200 hardened shooters, veterans, instructors, and competitors hold their breath as if waiting for a verdict? Anna's hands trembled slightly, but not from fear. It was weight, the impossible weight of a .50 caliber rifle, heavy in her grip, heavier still because of who had placed it there. Commander Jake, a Navy SEAL whose name carried stories whispered like myth, had stepped forward and pressed his personal weapon into her palms. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't sought attention, but had leaned close, voice low, words sharp as steel cutting into silence. Show them what practice really means. The challenge wasn't just hers anymore. The eyes of America's most elite marksmen drilled into her. Every one of them had failed at the shot she was about to take. They had tried for days, some for weeks. Now they were watching a 22-year-old foreign student, barely over 5 feet tall, attempt what their reputations had crumbled against. The air was thin, sharp, restless. And quiet Anna dismissed Anna, breathed once, let the mountains fade and steadied her aim. But what nobody here knew was that 6 months earlier she had been banned from 3 different ranges. Not for breaking rules, not for danger. They had called her a liability, too inexperienced, too unproven, too ordinary. They were about to find out how wrong they had been. The morning that had started this entire chain of events had been far less dramatic. Anna remembered it with a clarity that still surprised her. The air in Colorado had been cold, crisp enough to sting her cheeks as she walked through the gates of the Precision Shooting Academy for the very first time. She carried nothing extraordinary: a worn canvas bag over her shoulder, a cheap thermos warming her hands, and a rifle case that looked unremarkable compared to the custom carbon fiber monsters others hauled with pride. 50 acres stretched ahead of her, ranges stacked like stair steps against the valley floor, each more challenging than the last. It was a place built not for beginners, but for mastery, for people who treated every bullet like it could mean life or death. And to the men and women inside, Anna looked like she had taken a wrong turn. At the registration desk, Tom Bradley barely hid his skepticism. He had seen thousands walk in. Most crumbled quickly. He sized her up with a Marine's practiced eye, jeans, boots that had seen better days, a jacket that wasn't tactical but casual, and an accent that gave away she wasn't American. "Help you, miss?" he asked, tone balanced between courtesy and dismissal. "I'm here for the open practice sessions," Anna said simply. Her Danish vowels made her sound younger, softer than she was. Bradley flipped open his logbook. Her name was there, plain as day. No affiliation, no recommendation, no credentials, just a paid day fee and a reservation. He slid the clipboard of waivers toward her. "First time here." "Yes," she said, "but I've been shooting for years back home." He gave the smile of a man who had heard that before. Shooting for years. Everyone claimed that. Hunting, plinking, a weekend hobby. They always thought it translated. It rarely did. She filled out the forms, quiet, deliberate. In the briefing hall, the room vibrated with the energy of soldiers and cops and competitive shooters who carried themselves with certainty. Their gear gleamed. Their equipment cost more than her car. And when Anna took a seat at the back with just a notebook and pen, it was as if she had sat in the wrong classroom. The instructor, Sergeant, delivered the daily safety talk with sharp precision. His eyes swept the room, landing on her, pausing long enough to add a remark that made the others smirk. "This isn't a beginner facility. If you're not prepared for professional standards, the local shooting club is down the road." The chuckles that followed didn't sting her as much as they might have. She just wrote the words down as if they were part of the notes. She had learned to live with being underestimated. Sometimes it worked in her favor. She signed up for Range 3, the simplest, the one nobody fought over, and as she walked across the gravel, rifle case in hand, she felt the calm that always descended on her before the first shot of the day. Because the truth, The truth none of them knew was that her preparation had been going on for years, in secret, in silence, in a way that no academy, no competition, no training manual could capture. Her apartment near the university was small, cluttered not with posters or decorations but with charts, ballistics tables scrawled with calculations, wind diagrams taped above her desk, shooting logs filled cover to cover, thousands of entries tracking every adjustment, every lesson, every mistake. Her father's handwriting appeared in some of those margins. Once a sniper in the Danish army, a man who had served alongside Americans in Afghanistan, a man who believed his daughter was destined for languages, diplomacy, perhaps law, until one day she had picked up his rifle on a whim, aimed at a paper target, and hit so cleanly that even he couldn't explain it. She hadn't been fascinated by the gun, not at first. She had been fascinated by the silence she found while shooting, a silence that stripped away noise, chatter, expectation, a silence that left only the target, the breath, the moment. Her father had tested her, then taught her wind, drop, breathing, patience. He had said something that stuck with her forever. True marksmanship isn't about beating someone else. It's about harmony. If your mind, your body, and your weapon aren't in harmony, the shot is already lost. So while others trained to impress, Anna trained to disappear, to fold herself into precision so clean it seemed unreal. At range 3, she unpacked her rifle, not military issue, not glamorous, a custom-built Remington 700 pieced together over years with her father's help, everything about it chosen for accuracy, not looks. To the casual eye, it looked ordinary, but to her, it was an extension of thought itself. The men nearby noticed her. Of course they did. A young woman, foreign, setting up among hardened shooters, their whispers carried like insects buzzing in hot air. Torres, she'll be gone in an hour. Carnival game shooter. She ignored them, she always did. Then came the range officer, Phil Hutchinson, with 23 years of Army service etched into his voice. He carried the kind of authority that made most newcomers shrink. "First time at a precision facility?" he asked, eyes on her modest gear. "First time here," she said evenly, "but I'd like to start at 300 yards. That stopped him. Most started at 100, 200 if they were brave. 300 meant confidence or foolishness. His eyebrow twitched. "Fine, but you'll need sub-2-inch groups to stay on that range. Fail and you drop back." "Understood," Anna said, checking her bolt with smooth familiarity. The shooters around her had shifted their attention now. Not out of respect, not yet. Out of curiosity. They wanted to see her fail. She lay prone, adjusted her cheek weld, breathed. Through her scope, the bullseye at 300 yards looked impossibly small, a tiny smudge in the mountain haze. She exhaled, paused, pressed. The shot cracked across the valley. Phil blinked into his spotting scope. He thought he had misread it. Dead center, perfect. Murmurs rippled, beginner's luck. But then she cycled the bolt, fired again. The hole swallowed the first one, a single tear in paper stretching wider. By her 5th round, the whispers had stopped. By her 10th, the silence was thicker than the mountain air. By her 20th, the target looked as though someone had pushed a single coin through it instead of 20 bullets. She sat back, calm, unshaken, as though she had merely breathed. Around her, disbelief broke into conversation, some impressed, some suspicious. Captain Lisa Torres, an Air Force veteran, approached, trying to mask her curiosity with professionalism. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" "My father taught me," Anna said simply. Torres studied her. Denmark, military family, but that still didn't explain this. It wasn't just skill. It was discipline so ingrained it looked like instinct. Anna offered no further explanation. She didn't want to be anyone's prodigy. She didn't want to be anyone's theory. She just wanted to shoot. And as the Colorado sun climbed higher, She had no idea that this quiet morning, these perfect shots, would draw the attention of people whose lives depended on precision. People who didn't just measure skill in points or trophies, but in lives saved or lost. Anna was no longer invisible, and that, she would soon learn, was both a gift and a curse. Because excellence, when it doesn't fit the mold, doesn't just shine, it threatens. And the academy, the very place she had come to learn, would soon treat her skill not as something to celebrate, but as something dangerous. Yet for now she only cleaned her rifle, logged her notes, and prepared for another day. Calm, quiet, focused. As if she didn't already feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. Why did the academy seem more interested in doubting her than recognizing her? Why did every clean shot feel less like proof of skill and more like evidence for suspicion? Anna felt the shift almost immediately. At 300 yards, she had erased their assumptions with a 20-round grouping so perfect that even hardened veterans had stopped breathing for a moment. At 500, she had silenced them further, making corrections in real time, riding the wind like she had lived inside its movements. But silence never stays silent for long. It curdled, it hardened into whispers, then into scrutiny. Her second day at the advanced range was different. More eyes lingered on her. Not the casual glances of other shooters, but the watchful stares of instructors who seemed to be taking notes for reasons she couldn't place. By her 10th shot, she realized she wasn't being evaluated as a shooter. She was being investigated as a problem. Master Sergeant Williams was the first to approach. Thick-voiced, square-shouldered, with the weight of years stamped into his movements. He introduced himself with professional courtesy, but his questions had an edge. "Miss, your registration form lists recreational shooting as your background. That doesn't match what we're seeing here." Anna, cleaning her rifle, replied evenly, "I prefer to let my shooting speak for itself." He pressed. Where had she trained? What competitions had she entered? What official programs could verify her skill? She gave the truth, pared down to the basics. "My father taught me. He was military. I've been practicing for years." Her answers, though honest, seemed only to deepen the suspicion. Captain Torres stepped in under the guise of safety checks. Range Officer Hutchinson required her to explain shot placement after every string, as though her performance needed dissection to find flaws. They weren't celebrating her. They were circling her. By the third week, it became official. Colonel Harrison called her into his office. His reputation preceded him, strict, polished, a man who carried military tradition in his posture. His office walls were lined with photos of decorated marksmen, medals, commendations, the pride of American sharpshooting heritage. He gestured for her to sit, but his tone made it clear this wasn't an invitation. It was a hearing. "Miss," he began, "your abilities have raised questions. You've shown skills well beyond what you listed in your paperwork. Our instructors are concerned." Anna held his gaze, calm but firm. "Sir, I haven't misrepresented myself. I said I learned from my father. I said I've been practicing for years. That's the truth." "Be that as it may," Harrison continued, "the level of performance you're displaying suggests training you haven't disclosed. We can't ignore that. Given your foreign citizenship and your current visa status, we have to consider all possibilities, including whether your skills were acquired through channels that could compromise our standards." The implication stung deeper than she expected. She wasn't being doubted because she wasn't skilled enough. She was being doubted because she was too skilled. She answered carefully, her voice steady. "Everything I know I learned at home, alone or with my father, that's it." But Harrison's tone never softened. "Until we can verify your background more thoroughly, I'm restricting you to the basic ranges. Advanced facilities are reserved for shooters with documented credentials." She left his office feeling the air colder than when she had entered. She had been punished not for failure, but for excellence. That night in her small apartment, she sat at her desk, staring at the meticulous practice logs she had built over years. Every number, every wind correction, every note of where she had improved. Pages that told the real story of her journey, not deception, but devotion. And yet none of it mattered here. To them she was an outlier, and outliers were threats. Her father's voice returned in memory. True marksmanship isn't about proving yourself to others. It's about execution when it matters most. She wondered if coming here had been a mistake. But then, life has ways of turning in directions you never expect. 3 weeks later, the academy received a call that changed everything. It came directly to Colonel Harrison's office, and the moment he hung up, the academy's atmosphere shifted like a storm rolling in. The Navy was sending a SEAL team for evaluation, not training, not routine, but a high-level test of counter-sniper protocols. The request had come from Admiral herself. They needed the Academy's ranges. They needed its environment. They needed someone or something to push their protocols to the limit. And the man leading the team was Commander Jake. His name carried weight like a thunderclap. Wasn't just another operator. He was a legend among special operations units, years of deployments, records in precision shooting, a developer of training protocols so effective they had become standards across naval warfare. Harrison had never been more eager to please. He cleared the advanced ranges. He assigned his best instructors to support roles. He prepared the academy for scrutiny unlike anything they'd faced before. But there was a problem. His team needed opposition, a shooter outside their doctrine, someone skilled enough to expose flaws in their methods, a true unknown variable. Not an instructor, not a competitor, not someone who already thought like the military. Someone independent, skilled, precise, adaptive. Harrison reviewed his options and the room grew tense. None fit the bill until Captain Torres broke the silence. What about the Danish woman? The suggestion hit the room like a dropped round. She's restricted, Williams objected instantly. We flagged her as a security concern. Exactly, Torres countered. She's independent. She hasn't been exposed to American doctrine, and her skill is undeniable. She's exactly what Commander needs, someone outside the system. The silence that followed wasn't about disbelief. It was about pride. To admit Torres was right meant admitting the academy had been wrong. Harrison leaned back, hands steepled, eyes narrowed. He didn't like it, but he also couldn't ignore it. Bring her in for a capabilities assessment, he ordered at last. If she meets requirements, we'll authorize her participation. But I want full documentation. Every shot recorded, every movement noted. If she's going to represent this academy, I want no doubts left standing. The irony wasn't lost on him. The very shooter they had treated as a liability was now being considered for one of the most critical evaluations in academy history. When the order reached Anna, she received it without expression. Inside, she felt the quiet pulse of vindication. They had doubted her, restricted her, branded her an anomaly, and now, suddenly, she was being asked to do the one thing they hadn't considered before. Not to prove herself, not to defend her reputation, but to serve. That Thursday morning, the assessment began. Range 12 stretched out across terrain designed to break even the best. Wind curled down from the mountains. Targets staggered at 600, 7, 8, 900 yards. A test meant to push any shooter to the edge. Harrison watched from the tower. Williams stood ready with a stopwatch. Torres leaned into a spotting scope, her expression unreadable. Anna set up her rifle like she always did. Calm, methodical, not a wasted motion. At 600 yards, 10 rounds fell into a group, so tight it looked like the paper itself had refused to tear apart. At 700, she read the shifting wind like a language only she could hear. Adjusted, fired, another perfect group. At 800, the margin grew, but never beyond control. At 900, she worked harder. every calculation a fight against the unseen. Her group opened, but still within the standard. By the time she finished, the silence in the observation deck wasn't doubt anymore. It was something else. Recognition. Williams admitted quietly to Harrison, "She just outshot me." Torres' scribbling notes didn't hide her satisfaction. "Her consistency is higher than most competition shooters I've seen. She's ready." Even Harrison, the skeptic, the gatekeeper, had no choice but to see what was before him. Anna, the woman they had dismissed, had proven herself in conditions designed to expose weakness. She didn't just meet their standards, she surpassed them. And in 72 hours, Commander Jake would arrive. A man whose reputation was built on spotting weakness. A man who had brought his personal rifle, not to impress, but to test. Anna would be standing across from him, the unknown variable he demanded. The shooter they had doubted would soon be the shooter their Navy relied on. And that, perhaps, was the most dangerous revelation of all. Because when preparation meets opportunity, even institutions are forced to face the truth they tried to ignore. Why did Commander Jake arrive at dawn, hours before anyone expected him? Why did he step onto the Colorado range with the same quiet weight as a storm about to break? Anna noticed him the moment he appeared. Compact build, sharpened eyes, the kind of presence that needed no introduction. Men like didn't walk into a place, they altered its gravity. He didn't wear the arrogance of legend. His confidence was quieter, colder. It came from years of watching life balance on a trigger press. And when his gaze landed on Anna, he didn't smile. He studied her, measured her. "You must be," he said finally, extending a hand. His voice was level, but his eyes flickered with curiosity. "I've heard you've been causing a stir here." Anna accepted his handshake, her own grip firm, her expression neutral. "I try to maintain consistent standards," she said simply. Gave a small, knowing smile, the kind that said he understood more than her words. "We'll see." The SEAL team had already transformed the academy overnight. Electronic targets dotted the ranges. Spotting equipment stood at every angle. Ballistic sensors hummed quietly in the mountain air. This wasn't just practice. This was evaluation at the highest level. And Anna, the foreign student once relegated to the basic ranges, was standing in the middle of it. His team didn't hide their skepticism. Hardened operators, men who had lived through deployments, scanned her with the subtle doubt of professionals who had seen amateurs fold under pressure. She didn't look like them. She didn't move like them, and yet had chosen her. The first scenario was explained with clipped precision. "You'll be opposition," said. "Targets scattered across simulated urban terrain, ranges from 600 to 800 yards, will attempt to clear objectives while you engage. Your job is to be a problem, good enough to stress our protocols, but safe enough to keep this a training exercise." Anna nodded. She understood. This wasn't just about accuracy. It was about thinking like an enemy, anticipating, adapting, making her presence felt in ways that forced their doctrine to bend. The range went silent as the scenario began. Her first target appeared 650 yards, visible only through a narrow window. She inhaled, exhaled, pressed. The shot rang out and the target shattered with a clean, sharp impact. Spotters exchanged glances. That wasn't luck. The second appeared 720 yards across uneven terrain, wind curling between them. She adjusted without hesitation. Another clean hit. Within minutes, the rhythm had changed. Anna wasn't just shooting. She was dictating tempo. Every strike forced the SEAL team to adapt. Every moment of hesitation in their advance was born of her presence. His voice came through comms, calm but edged. "Opposition shooter is performing above parameters. Adjust team protocols." Anna allowed herself the smallest smile. She wasn't here to prove herself. She was here to challenge them. And it was working. By the end of the first scenario, even the operators who had doubted her were stealing longer glances. Not disbelief anymore. Respect. The kind that grew grudgingly, then rooted deep. The second scenario raised the stakes. Targets between 900 and 1,000 yards. Elevation changes. Shifting wind. Targets that appeared and vanished within seconds. This time there was no time to think. She had to move on instinct, spot, calculate, fire. Her breathing slowed. Her mind entered that familiar place her father had taught her to find, where noise dissolved, where the world narrowed to a single point of focus. 900 yards, first round hit. 980, another hit. 1,000 with wind gusts threatening every correction. She paused only long enough to trust her training, squeezed, struck. By the fifth target, Evan's eyes betrayed surprise. She wasn't just accurate, she was adaptive, quick, calm under pressures that broke even experienced shooters. And though no one said it aloud, the unspoken truth hung in the air. She was matching them, shot for shot. During the break, approached her, arms crossed, eyes narrowed in thought. "Your father taught you well," he said, voice quiet, probing. "But this level of composure, this isn't recreational training. Where did you really learn?" Anna wiped her rifle clean, her movement steady. "I told you, my father, and years of practice." Studied her, searching for cracks for a lie. But he found none. Just the calm of someone who had spent years in discipline, not years in battle. He gave a slow nod. "Then maybe discipline is rarer than I thought." The third scenario was the true test. Unknown distances. Targets scattered from 600 to 1,200 yards. No time for pre-measurements. No second chances. Explained bluntly. Combat doesn't wait, estimate, adjust, make the first shot count. Anna's heart beat heavier now. She had practiced unknown distances, but not under this kind of scrutiny, not with lives of reputation and protocol balanced on her performance. The first target appeared. 800 yards. She calculated range by size and reference points, adjusted, fired, perfect hit. The second, 975, quick mental math, press, strike. The third, 1,100, barely visible through haze. She steadied breath, trusted her calculation. The impact rang true. By the time the scenario ended, his team had been forced to alter their doctrine midstream. Anna's precision had pushed them to adapt in real time, exactly what the evaluation demanded. When the range went silent, gathered his men in a huddle. Anna, cleaning her rifle, caught fragments of their discussion, protocol holds, adaptive adjustments, validated under stress. When approached again, his tone had shifted. He said, "That was combat-level precision. Outside of deployment, I haven't seen many shoot like that. You didn't just meet the standard, you set it." For Anna, the words weren't a triumph. They were a weight. Recognition was dangerous. It drew attention. It demanded answers. But she also felt something she hadn't in weeks at the academy: vindication. For once, her excellence wasn't suspicion. It was value. The day ended with nodding results into his log, his expression tight, reflective. His approval was silent but heavy. Anna packed her gear, methodical as always, her heart steadying as the sun sank behind the mountains. But in the quiet of that evening, as she walked to her car, a thought pressed against her. Respect came with risk, attention came with demands. And though recognition was genuine, the Academy's eyes were sharper now than ever. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer a liability. She was something far more complicated. She was proof. Proof that discipline could outmatch credentials, that dedication could rival doctrine. And proof, Anna feared, was often the most dangerous thing of all. Why did hand her his personal rifle, the one he trusted more than any weapon in the world? Why did he place it in her hands as though the moment itself carried more weight than any training exercise could explain? The .50 caliber lay across her palms like a piece of history. Heavy, uncompromising, a weapon designed not for sport but for battlefields. She had studied it in manuals, memorized its ballistics, even traced its design in notebooks, but she had never fired one. Now Commander Jake, Navy SEAL legend, man of records, was watching her, expression unreadable, as he spoke the words that would test everything she had ever prepared for. "This is the real test," he said. His voice didn't rise, it didn't need to, the gravity in it was enough. Unknown target, extreme range, one shot. Around them, the SEAL team shifted closer. Spotters raised optics. Even the academy staff, gathered on the ridge, leaned in with the stillness of people sensing history might unfold. Anna lowered herself into position. The rested against her shoulder, massive compared to the Remington she knew so well. Its recoil would be punishing. Its weight demanded strength. But the real test wasn't muscle, it was mind. She peered through the scope. The target sat 1,200 yards away, a small mark, barely visible against the mountain backdrop. To most, it would seem impossible. To Anna, it was a puzzle, a problem of numbers, wind, and breath. She studied the conditions. Elevation, 847 feet above target. Wind, 8 miles per hour, drifting from 2 o'clock. She ran the numbers in her head, each calculation unfolding like a language she had spent years learning. She chambered the round. The metallic click echoed through her bones. It was alive now, and it demanded respect. Her father's words whispered back to her, words he had repeated 100 times. True marksmanship isn't perfect conditions. It's perfect execution when conditions are imperfect. Her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. Through the scope, the world narrowed. The academy, the SEALs, the whispers, the doubts all faded. Only the target remained. She exhaled, paused, squeezed. The roared, a thunderclap rolling across the valley. Dust kicked from the ground. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, but her body absorbed it with the practiced calm of someone who had prepared her entire life for this moment. Silence, a long, breathless silence. Through his spotting scope, tracked the flight, a faint blur across 1,200 yards of Colorado mountain air. The impact bloomed in a puff of debris. Dead center. Perfect. Didn't blink. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. His words carried across the range with finality. First round, 1,200 yards, unfamiliar weapon, dead center. The SEAL team shifted, exchanging looks not of disbelief, but of respect, the kind reserved for those who had crossed an invisible line. Captain Torres, watching from behind, exhaled as if she had been holding her breath the entire time. Her eyes shone with quiet vindication. Even Master Sergeant Williams, who had dismissed Anna weeks earlier, stood still, expression carved by something heavier than admiration. Regret, maybe. Realization, certainly. Anna worked the bolt, ejected the spent cartridge, and reset her position as though it were just another drill. She knew it was. Her body felt the truth of it in every nerve, every heartbeat. She had just done what few could, and she had done it under eyes that mattered most. When she sat back, approached, his steps were slow, deliberate. He looked at her not as an anomaly, not as a curiosity, but as a peer. He said quietly, "That was some of the finest precision shooting I've ever witnessed outside a combat zone." Anna lowered her eyes to the rifle, her fingers brushing the metal as she cleaned it with deliberate care. She didn't smile. She didn't celebrate. She simply spoke the words she believed. 4 years of preparation. My father always said that when opportunity meets preparation, extraordinary things become possible. Studied her for a moment, then nodded once, as if sealing an understanding between them. The debrief with his team was brief, but decisive. Her shooting hadn't just validated their training protocols. It had forced them to adapt in real time, strengthening their doctrine in ways no simulation could achieve. Told his men, "Today's evaluation proved our methods. Its precision exposed weaknesses we needed to see. That will save lives in the field." The SEALs didn't applaud. They didn't need to. Their acknowledgement was in their eyes, in the way they approached Anna afterward, offering quiet nods, silent respect. In their world, that carried more weight than medals. But beyond respect, something else had shifted. Anna wasn't invisible anymore. She wasn't the foreign student relegated to basic ranges. She wasn't the liability dismissed by forms and paperwork. She was now a name tied to proof. Proof that discipline could rival doctrine. Proof that excellence, even without credentials, could rise to the highest standards. That night the academy buzzed with conversations it had never dared before. Words like exceptional, unprecedented, combat-level precision. And mixed with them words like problem, liability, threat. Because recognition, Anna realized, was double-edged. She had won respect, but in winning it she had also won scrutiny. Colonel Harrison called an emergency meeting the next day. Admiral herself had received report. Her secure message praised the Academy for supporting the SEAL evaluation, but her words carried a pointed edge. This level of civilian capability suggests either extraordinary individual skill or systematic underutilization of civilian resources. I want to understand how this talent was identified and why it remained unknown until now. Harrison sat at his desk, expression carved in stone, as if the words weighed more than medals on his wall. The Academy had spent weeks treating Anna as a security concern. Now she was being recognized at the highest levels of naval command. It wasn't celebration, it was crisis. Because admitting her value meant admitting they had failed to see it. That afternoon, Harrison summoned Anna again. This time, his voice carried something she hadn't heard before, respect tempered by apology. "Miss," he said, "your performance has been extraordinary. Restrictions on your access are lifted effective immediately. Advanced ranges, equipment, training, all open to you. What happened here should not have happened. You have my apology." Anna listened quietly, absorbing the weight of his words. She nodded, but she didn't gloat. Her vindication wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Later pulled her aside privately. His tone was serious, heavier than before. He said, "What you did today is going to attract attention far beyond this range. Opportunities, demands, maybe more than you ever asked for. Make sure you choose carefully. Recognition can open doors, but it can also close them." She met his eyes steady. "I didn't come here for recognition. I came to test myself, to honor the discipline my father taught me." His gaze softened slightly, the faintest smile tugging at his mouth. "Then don't lose that, because that's rarer than your aim." That night, back in her apartment, Anna sat with her practice logs spread across her desk. She traced the neat columns of numbers with her fingers, each one representing years of quiet preparation. For so long, her excellence had been treated as a threat. Now, it had been treated as a necessity. And for the first time since arriving in Colorado, she felt something deeper than vindication. She felt purpose. But as the mountain winds rattled her window, she also understood something else. Purpose came with cost, and she had only just begun to pay it. Why did victory feel heavier than failure? Why, after her perfect shot, did Anna sense that her life had become less her own? The morning after the shot, the academy was buzzing. Voices carried in low tones down the halls, not with gossip but with weight. The SEAL team had already left, their gear packed, their evaluation logged. But the echoes of what they had witnessed still rattled the academy's walls. Anna walked into the range quietly as she always did. Same worn jacket, same calm pace, same simple rifle case. But the way people looked at her had shifted, not dismissive now, not curious, watchful, heavy with an unspoken question. Who was she really? She sat up at the bench like she had 100 times before, checked her optics, adjusted her rifle, breathed. To her nothing had changed, but around her the air felt thick with scrutiny. Colonel Harrison convened his staff that afternoon. The message from Admiral had arrived, sharp as a knife edge. Civilian shooter exceeded military sniper standards during multiple engagement scenarios. This raises questions about how talent of this level is identified, trained, and utilized. Harrison read the words aloud, his voice tight. The implication was clear. The Navy wanted answers, and the Academy's credibility was on the line. Captain Torres leaned forward, her tone calm but firm. "Sir, this is exactly what I warned about. We restricted her because she didn't fit our categories. Now she's proven herself at the highest level. If we don't change how we evaluate talent, this will happen again." Williams shifted uncomfortably. "With respect, Captain, is an anomaly. We can't base policy on an exception." Torres didn't flinch. "Or maybe we can't afford to ignore exceptions anymore." Harrison stayed silent, his eyes fixed on the Admiral's words. His pride was wounded, but his instincts told him this was bigger than one shooter. By evening, an order had been drafted. Anna was no longer restricted. She had full access to every range, every facility, every program the Academy offered. The next morning, Harrison delivered the news himself. "Miss," he said, standing before her at the range, "your skills have proven themselves beyond question. All restrictions are lifted. Effective immediately, you are authorized full access." Anna nodded politely, but her face betrayed no triumph. Inside, she felt only a quiet confirmation. She had never needed their permission to know what she was capable of, but recognition, at last, carried its own weight. Later that day, called her privately. His voice over the secure line was steady, almost paternal. "Your performance is already moving through channels. There will be interest, opportunities, maybe more than you expected. You need to be careful. Some will see you as an asset. Others will see you as a challenge." Anna leaned against her desk, staring at her ballistics charts. "I didn't ask for any of this," she admitted softly. "I know," replied. "That's why I trust you with it. Just remember, the higher you climb, the thinner the air." That evening, Anna returned to her apartment and sat in silence. She had spent 4 years building her skill, brick by brick, in solitude. Every calculation, every practice session, every note logged, all of it was for her own discipline, her own peace. Now that discipline had been pulled into something larger: military protocols, institutional pride, national readiness. She wasn't just shooting anymore, she was representing. 3 days later, she received a formal invitation. The Academy wanted her to demonstrate advanced instruction techniques for a visiting Air Force Special Operations unit. It wasn't a suggestion, it was an expectation. Anna hesitated. Teaching wasn't her aim. She had no desire to stand in front of professionals and claim authority, but she understood the implication. This was no longer just about her. It was about proving that civilians could contribute meaningfully to military training. She accepted. The day of the session, she stood before 12 operators, men and women who carried themselves with the calm confidence of combat veterans. They studied her with curiosity, perhaps even skepticism. Anna spoke simply. "Precision is not about ego. It's not about beating someone else. It's about eliminating everything except the shot. Noise, distraction, even yourself." Then she demonstrated. Range 900 yards, conditions shifting wind. Time limit 60 seconds per shot. Her grouping was flawless. The operators, professionals who had seen the best, exchanged glances that carried unspoken respect. One approached her afterward, voice low. "You're not military, but you shoot like you've been under fire." Anna shook her head. "I shoot like I've been under discipline." The words spread, quietly then louder. By week's end, the Academy had assigned her an unofficial title, Advanced Civilian Instructor. It was unprecedented. No civilian had ever been given such authority, but her performance demanded it. Not everyone welcomed the change. William still bristled, muttering about security concerns about breaking tradition. Others feared what it meant for the Academy's hierarchy. If civilians could match or exceed military standards, what did that say about the system? Anna felt the pressure building. Every day brought new requests: consult on doctrine, demonstrate to visiting units, assist in evaluations. Her solitude was gone, replaced by a spotlight she had never wanted. At night, in the stillness of her apartment, she wrestled with it. Was this truly her path, or was she being consumed by an institution that had once rejected her? Her father's memory returned to her again and again. Marksmanship is about harmony. If you lose harmony, you lose everything. And harmony was harder to hold when the world demanded pieces of her. 6 weeks after the SEAL evaluation, the Academy held a ceremony. Admiral herself returned, presenting Anna with a civilian commendation, recognition that her shooting had validated training protocols now implemented across special operations. Miss exceptional precision and tactical adaptability enhanced our readiness, the Admiral said, her voice carrying across the hall. She represents the highest standard of civilian contribution to military objectives. The applause was loud, but Anna stood quietly, eyes lowered, hands steady. She accepted the commendation, but inside she thought only of her father and the small shooting club in Denmark where this had begun. Afterward, Colonel Hansen addressed the Academy. His words were measured, but they carried the weight of accountability. "We failed, miss," he admitted. "We treated excellence as a threat because it didn't fit our categories. That ends now. From this day forward, our evaluation processes will change. Capability will be recognized, no matter the source." Anna listened, calm, reflective. She didn't need his apology, but she recognized its importance. The Academy was changing, and she had been the catalyst. Later, Williams approached her, the same man who had once doubted her most harshly. His voice was quieter now. "I was wrong. What you gave that team was invaluable. I owe you an apology." Anna met his eyes steady. Sometimes doubt is useful. It forces us to clarify who we are. For the first time, William smiled. By then, Anna's role had expanded. She wasn't just a shooter. She was a bridge between military tradition and civilian dedication, between doctrine and discipline. And though recognition had never been her aim, she found herself carrying it with grace. Still, in her quietest moments, she wondered, was this harmony, or was she losing the very solitude that had made her great? Why did recognition feel more like a chain than a medal? Why, after months of proving herself, did Anna sense the walls of her own life closing in? The Academy had changed. New policies, new evaluations, a wider lens for identifying talent, and at the center of it all, whether she liked it or not, was Anna. Her name had begun to travel, quietly at first, in after-action reports, in training evaluations, in briefings where her performance was used as a benchmark. Then louder, journalists requested interviews. Civilian shooting clubs wrote to her, asking for appearances. Defense contractors floated offers. She ignored most of them. She hadn't come for fame, but attention has a way of bleeding into every corner of life. At the range, she no longer shot in solitude. Instructors brought groups to observe her, framing her discipline as an example. Operators asked questions between her strings, dissecting her thought process. She answered patiently, but she felt the erosion of her quiet space. The solitude that had once been her sanctuary had been replaced with expectation. Captain Torres noticed. She was one of the few who spoke to Anna not as a symbol but as a person. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Torres found her cleaning her rifle in silence. "You don't look proud," Torres said gently. Anna glanced up, then back at the bolt in her hands. "Pride isn't the point." "Then what is?" Anna paused, her father's words surfaced again. "Harmony, discipline, the silence before the shot." Torres studied her, understanding more than she said. Don't let them take that from you. But holding on to it grew harder each day. 1 month later, the pressure reached a new peak. A joint task force of Army Rangers and Marine Recon requested her assistance in a simulated counter-sniper operation, not as opposition this time, as support. Your role, Harrison explained, is to demonstrate how a lone precision shooter can integrate with team doctrine. Think of it as a proof of concept. Anna hesitated. Integration meant compromise, working inside their rhythm, not hers, but refusal wasn't truly an option. She accepted. The exercise took place across 3 miles of mountainous terrain, targets hidden in brush, behind rocks, across valleys. The teams moved in coordinated patterns, sweeping sector by sector. Anna was positioned at the flank, tasked with providing overwatch. At first, the integration worked. Her calls were precise. Her shots cleared lanes. But as the pace quickened, she felt the weight of doctrine pressing against her instinct. At one point, she spotted a hidden target, a simulated enemy sniper's nest at 800 yards. Her instincts screamed for immediate engagement, but the protocol demanded confirmation from command. By the time approval came, the target had vanished. The exercise continued, but Anna carried the moment like a stone in her chest. Protocol had cost them. In real combat, it could have cost lives. Afterward, the debrief grew tense. The Rangers defended protocol. The Marines admitted Anna's instincts had been right. Harrison tried to mediate, but, present as an observer, cut through the noise. Doctrine saves units, he said flatly, but instinct saves moments, and sometimes moments decide everything. The room fell silent, turned to Anna. You did what you were told, that matters, but next time trust your instinct, even when it costs you. She nodded, quietly absorbing his words. That night back in her apartment, she replayed the missed shot over and over. Not the mechanics, the decision. She had chosen obedience over instinct. Harmony had slipped, and it unsettled her more than any technical failure ever had. She began training differently. Not just calculations and groupings, but scenarios where instinct had to lead. Moving targets, unknown variables, split-second decisions. She pushed herself to react without overthinking, to trust what years of discipline had built into her bones. But with each new layer of training, the pressure outside grew heavier. The academy began fielding inquiries from beyond the military. Civilian leaders wanted to know how talent like hers could be cultivated nationally. Politicians floated her name as an example in speeches about potential recruitment reform. Anna wanted no part of it, yet her story, carefully shaped, stripped of nuance, was already spreading. The Danish student who outshot the SEALs. The civilian who redefined sniper standards. She didn't recognize the person in those headlines. Called again, his voice heavier this time. They'll want to use you, he warned. Not just for training, for narrative. Be careful. Once you become a symbol, you stop being a person. Anna closed her eyes, listening to his words. She had already felt it, the erosion of her solitude, the slow theft of her silence. But symbols can't hide. 2 months later, the Academy hosted an international demonstration. NATO representatives, defense officials, observers from allied nations, and at the center of the showcase, Anna. The scenario was staged but brutal. Unknown targets spread across 1,500 yards of harsh terrain, crosswinds strong enough to warp bullets mid-flight. Anna stepped to the line with in her hands once more. Cameras tracked her, officials whispered, the world's eyes narrowed. Her first shot struck true, her second cleaner still. By her fifth, the murmurs had shifted from curiosity to astonishment. One of the NATO generals leaned toward Harrison, whispering what many were already thinking. She's operating beyond doctrine. That's not training. That's artistry. When the demonstration ended, the applause was real, but Anna felt none of it. She packed her rifle quietly as she always had. Later in the empty range, Torres found her again. You realize what you've done. They're going to build programs around you. Anna shook her head. They're building them around a version of me that doesn't exist. I'm not a program, I'm just disciplined. Torres placed a hand on her shoulder. And that's exactly why they'll never understand you. That night Anna wrote in her logbook, not ballistics this time, not calculations, just a thought etched carefully in ink. Discipline is strength, recognition is weight, harmony is survival. She closed the book, set it aside and sat in silence. For the first time since coming to Colorado, she wondered if the silence she sought could survive the noise she had become. And in that thought lay the seed of her next conflict. Why did silence feel further away now than it ever had before? Why, even with the world praising her name, did Anna feel less certain of who she was becoming? The demonstration had changed everything. NATO's applause had carried beyond the mountains of Colorado, echoing in halls of power Anna had never set foot in. Reports circulated, proposals drafted. Her name became shorthand for untapped potential. At the academy, she was no longer just Anna. She was the civilian who set the new standard. And that title came with demands. Every morning her calendar filled with briefings, demonstrations, consultations. She spoke less with rifles and more with words, explaining, justifying, teaching. The solitude of the range, her sanctuary, was being carved away piece by piece. Captain Torres noticed the wear in her eyes. She found Anna one evening, sitting alone at range 12 after hours, her rifle across her knees, staring at the distant targets she hadn't fired at all day. "You're burning out," Torres said softly. Anna didn't look up. "This isn't what I came here for. The shot used to be silence. Now it's noise, a stage." Torres sat beside her, quiet for a long time. Then, "Symbols don't get to choose how they're used, but you can choose how you carry it. Don't let them hollow you out." Anna let the words sink in, but she felt the weight pressing heavier. That weight became undeniable the following week, when Colonel Harrison summoned her to a closed-door meeting. Inside, she found not just Harrison but two men in suits, representatives from the Defense Department. Their tone was polished, their words rehearsed. "Miss," one began, "your capabilities have already influenced training doctrine. We'd like to explore formal integration, advisory roles, perhaps even operational support." Anna's stomach tightened. "Operational support? I'm not military." The other man leaned forward. "True, but your skill is strategic. With proper clearances, your contributions could save lives. We're offering more than recognition. We're offering purpose." The word hung heavy. Purpose. It was what she had always sought in her discipline, but now it was being redefined by people who saw her not as Anna but as an asset. She answered carefully, "I came here to learn, to test myself, not to be used as an example or a tool." The man smiled thinly, the kind of smile that carried authority behind it. "Miss, with respect, you already are." Harrison dismissed them after the meeting, but his expression was grim. "Be careful. Attention from above is rarely about you. It's about what you represent." That night Anna sat at her desk, staring at her practice logs. The neat rows of numbers, the careful notes, the quiet discipline that had once defined her life. Now they felt like relics from a past that was slipping further away. Her phone buzzed. His name lit the screen. "Tell me what's happening," he said when she answered. His tone was calm but direct. "They want me in advisory roles. Maybe more," Anna admitted. Was silent for a moment. Then, "You need to decide who you are, not who they want you to be. If you lose that, your aim won't matter." Anna closed her eyes. She could hear the truth in his words, but choosing who she was felt harder with every passing day. 2 weeks later, the Academy hosted a classified joint exercise. Foreign observers were present again. This time, Anna was asked not to demonstrate but to shadow, to provide real-time precision support for a mixed team of operators during a high-stakes scenario. It wasn't combat, but it was close enough. As the team advanced through the course, Anna provided overwatch. Her calls were precise. Her shots eliminated every target she was tasked with. The operation ran smoother than expected. But afterward, in the debrief, one of the foreign officers made a remark that struck like a blade. Imagine what she could do if she wasn't just supporting training, but integrated into real missions. A civilian sniper redefining modern warfare. The room stirred, some intrigued, some uneasy. Anna felt her stomach twist. She hadn't chosen this path, but already it was being drawn around her. That evening she sat in her apartment, lights off, silence heavy. Her rifle leaned against the wall, untouched. She thought of Denmark, of her father, of the quiet range where he had first placed a rifle in her hands and told her harmony mattered more than anything else. Harmony, the word felt fragile now. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Torres. "Come outside," the message read. Anna stepped into the cool night air to find Torres waiting with 2 coffees. They sat on the curb in silence for a while, the stars overhead sharp in the mountain sky. "You're not sleeping," Torres said. Anna shook her head. "Every time I close my eyes I see it, not the targets, the attention, the way they look at me, like I'm not a person anymore." Torres sipped her coffee. "That's because to them you're not. You're leverage, proof that the system missed something, proof they can use." Anna stared at the ground. "I just wanted discipline, silence. Now it feels like I'm losing both." Torres placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then fight for it. Don't let them define you, not the military, not the press, not even the people who respect you. Hold on to the part that's yours." Anna nodded slowly, the weight in her chest shifting, not gone but steadied. Still, she knew the pressure wasn't easing. It was escalating. The next week, another letter arrived. Not an invitation this time. A directive. She was to attend a classified program review in Washington, D.C. Her performance and recommendations would be evaluated for potential integration into national policy. She folded the letter carefully, set it on her desk, and stared at it for a long time. Her father's words echoed once more. True marksmanship isn't about beating someone else. It's about harmony. If you lose harmony, you lose everything. She whispered to herself in the quiet, "Am I losing everything?" The question hung in the room, unanswered. Because sometimes the greatest battles aren't fought across valleys with rifles. They're fought inside, in silence, against the pull of a world that wants to own you. And Anna was about to step into the greatest test of her life, one no rifle could solve. Why did Washington feel louder than any rifle shot she had ever taken? Why, sitting in a glass tower filled with polished uniforms and polished words, did Anna feel smaller than she had on any range? The directive had brought her here, not an invitation this time, not a choice, a demand. She sat at a long oak table, her practice logs spread before men and women who saw them not as discipline, but as data. Each note she had once written for herself was now dissected as proof, as leverage, as justification for programs they wanted to expand. "Your precision demonstrates an extraordinary civilian potential," one official said, voice sharp with certainty. "We believe your methods can be scaled, replicated, institutionalized." Anna's jaw tightened. What you see as methods were years of solitude, silence, hours no one watched. You can't replicate that with policy. Another leaned forward. "With respect, miss, you're proof it can be done." Proof, the word again, a word that turned her into a symbol. She spoke quietly, but her voice carried. "Proof of what? That I practiced until the noise fell away, that I chased harmony until it became who I was. That's not a program, that's a choice, and it's mine." The room shifted uneasily. Officials exchanged glances, their smiles tight, their pens scratching. Had warned her. Once you become a symbol, you stop being a person. She felt it now more than ever. After the meeting, she walked the streets of D.C. alone. The monuments glowed under floodlights. Tourists laughed, snapped photos, carried souvenirs. And Anna, foreigner and stranger, carried nothing but the weight of her own silence. That night in her hotel room, she unpacked her rifle case. Not to practice, not to prepare, just to lay the weapon across her knees and remember why she had ever picked it up. Her father's words whispered back, harmony, discipline, the silence before the shot. She closed her eyes, breathing until the noise of the city faded, until it was just her and the rifle, until she felt whole again. The next morning she returned to the review board, but this time she didn't bring her logs, she brought herself. They asked for methods, she gave them truth. You can't train silence, she told them. You can't institutionalize discipline, you can only choose it. And if you think you can turn that into a program, you'll lose the very thing that makes it real. Some frowned, some scribbled notes. One, an older general, leaned back with a slow, thoughtful nod. She knew then that she wasn't here to be accepted. She was here to speak the truth they didn't want to hear. By evening, the decision was made. She would not be absorbed into any program. She would not be written into doctrine. She would remain what she had always been, independent. The officials framed it as her choice, but Anna knew the truth. She had refused to be owned. When she returned to Colorado, the academy greeted her differently. No ceremony, no applause, just quiet nods. Was waiting at the range, his eyes, sharp as ever, studied her. You didn't let them take you. Anna shook her head. They tried, but harmony doesn't belong in a boardroom. He allowed himself the faintest smile. Then you'll be fine. But Anna wasn't sure what fine meant anymore. She had proven herself, yes. She had reshaped policies, yes. But the cost was real. The solitude she once found so easily was harder to reach now. Still, she chose to keep chasing it. Every morning she returned to the range. Not for them, not for reports, for herself. She logged her shots. She traced her notes. She breathed into silence until the world narrowed again. Sometimes Torres joined her, sometimes called. Sometimes younger shooters came to watch, hopping to learn. She let them. She explained what she could, but she never gave away the core. That was hers. And slowly she found balance again. Not the perfect solitude she once had, but a new kind of harmony. One forged in noise but carried in silence. Months later, at a small civilian range far from the academy, she stood alone. Just a rifle, a target, and the sound of wind. She aimed. She breathed. She pressed. The shot rang true, as it always had. And in that moment, Anna understood. She didn't need medals. She didn't need headlines. She didn't need institutions to define her. Her strength had never been in recognition. It had always been in discipline, in silence, in the quiet resilience of choosing harmony, no matter who was watching. As the casing clinked softly against the bench, she whispered to herself, barely audible against the wind. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And then she packed her rifle, slung her bag, and walked away. Not as a symbol, not as a soldier, but as Anna, the woman who found strength not in noise, but in silence.